Well, hey guys, we're way off somewhere in the middle of McNairy County, Tennessee today at Gravel Hill Cemetery. We're here to introduce you to a guy, well, if you can't call him one of the main players in the state line Buford Pusser story, I'll call him a foundational player. Let's meet McNairy County Sheriff James Dickey. James Dickey was born on September the 29th, 1923. Right here in McNairy County. Sheriff Dickey was sheriff just before Buford Pusser of Walking Tall fame. We'll tell you more of that story in just a bit. And hey, if you like this kind of content, why don't you bump that like button? Or if I get Sheriff Dickey all wrong, well, just leave us a comment. Tell us how. Sheriff Dickey was portrayed by a fictitious character in the original Walking Tall movie called Sheriff Al Thurman. But I gotta remind you, that movie was just that. It was Hollywood. It's a movie. There really were no similarities that I can find anyway between Sheriff Al Thurman in the movie and James Dickey in the real world McNairy County. And why is a YouTube channel dedicated to the great state of Mississippi doing a video about McNairy County Sheriff? Well, so many people integral to the stories that developed in and around the state line were Mississippians. And Sheriff Dickey was definitely part of what I call the BP state line story before Pusser. Sheriff Dickey lived at Raymer before his appointment as deputy sheriff, and he was a veteran of World War II. Sheriff Dickey was a farmer before he started working with the McNairy County Sheriff's Department sometime in 1958. As in all things state line, there seems to be two versions of every story, and Sheriff Dickey's really is no different. So I can say I'm fairly confident that in June of 1962, that Dickey served papers to Jack Hathcock condemning Jack's House of Suds and the Rainbow Room for structural issues. After serving those papers, he left Jack and eased on down to the Shamrock to visit with Louise, where he told her, of course, that he just served papers on Jack condemning his properties. This information would, of course, thrill Louise. She, of course, wanted to be to her ex-husband at business and, well, life in general. If you believe half of what you read, then Sheriff Dickey had some sort of personal relationship with Louise Hathcock. Enough of a relationship that Louise's lover, soon-to-be husband, Towhead White, was jealous at times. One of Dickey's favorite restaurants was the Old Home restaurant right there in Adamsville. He especially liked their pie. Sheriff Dickey met a young Buford Pusser there one day and invited him to go along with him on a raid to the Shamrock. In my mind, Sheriff Dickey was sort of showing the young lawman the ropes. Apparently, the next day, Pusser met with an old sheriff named Hugh Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick had heard that Pusser was going with Dickey to the state line for the raid. He explained to Pusser that he called this a paper raid. It was intended to make the public think that the sheriff was working hard to keep all the bars and such in line, but that they wouldn't find anything because they already know he's coming. And if you believe everything I've read, then Sheriff Dickey had a relationship with several other state liners. And just like the old sheriff predicted to Pusser when the raid was conducted, no whiskey was found. 1964 found James Dickey running for a second term as sheriff of McNairy County. He hung posters all over the county, even down by the state line. He and Louise visited after he got through hanging his posters, and she asked him how he was doing. He bluntly answered, "I have cancer." He told her the doctor wanted him to do more tests, but he was going to make him wait until the election was over. Somewhere around this time, Sheriff Dickey was held for contempt of court. In July of '63, Dickey had arrested a lady and confiscated 33 cans of her beer. The case was dismissed because she had no warrant and no proof that she actually sold beer without a license. The court ordered Sheriff Dickey to return the beer, which he ignored. Sheriff Dickey had to return the beer or face going to jail. One story I read said that Louise told the sheriff to return the lady's beer and stay out of jail. He was no good to her if he was locked up. Now, the night I think that Louise used the sheriff the most, she invited him to Shamrock for a visit. After a while, Louise told him that he could only stay for a few more minutes, and I imagine after a while he became frustrated and simply left. In the next little while, Louise directed the murder of her ex-husband Jack. After Jack was killed, Louise had one of her accomplices to beat her up. They waited several minutes, and then they called Sheriff Dickey. When he pulled into the parking lot, Louise met him and said, "I had to kill him. He tried to rape me, then he beat me up." And of course, what better alibi than the sheriff? Louise did go to trial, but she was not convicted of her husband's death. On August the 1st, 1964, Trooper Richard McClanahan and Sheriff James Dickey responded to a call about an accident on Highway 22 near the state line. According to some, Dickey's right front tire blew out, forcing him to swerve across the southbound lane of Highway 45, where he slammed into a bunch of oak trees. The trooper was just behind Sheriff Dickey, but could offer no help. There were rumors that Dickey had committed suicide because he knew that his cancer was terminal. Others believed that he was killed by Buford Pusser, who would be elected sheriff. There was still another rumor that he was killed by some of those along the state line because the feds had been looking into his activities. The FBI had been surveilling James Dickey, but I think this had more to do with their investigation of some of the state line clubs than it had to do with Dickey. Whatever the cause, Sheriff James Dickey's end of watch came on August 1st, 1964, somewhere around 6:15 a.m., about a mile above the Mississippi-Tennessee state line. Thank you.